You're not tired because you're weak. You're tired because you're carrying too much that was never meant to be yours. Welcome to Momentum Mind, where today's story reveals why doing less can actually give you more power, more clarity, and more control over your life. Let's begin. Chapter 1: The Noise That Never Slept. The city never truly slept. Even when the streets went quiet, there was a hum beneath everything, like a restless animal breathing in the dark. Lights blinked from towers of glass. Screens glowed in bedrooms, offices, cafes that never closed. Messages traveled through the air like invisible insects, buzzing, demanding attention. In the middle of it all walked Elias. He moved fast, always slightly leaning forward, as if chasing something that stayed just beyond reach. His bag was heavy, not from weight but from obligation. Papers he hadn't read. Devices that pulsed with reminders. Promises he had made with good intentions and forgotten the moment something louder appeared. He told himself he was doing well. People often said so. He was busy. Busy meant important. Busy meant valuable. Or so he believed. That morning, the city greeted him with noise before the sun fully rose. A screen on the train shouted news. Another flashed offers. A voice in his ear reminded him of meetings, calls, favors owed. His thoughts felt like a room where everyone spoke at once and no one listened. He arrived at a tall building made of glass and steel, where the air smelled like coffee and urgency. Inside, people rushed past him with practiced smiles. They carried purpose like a badge, though many could not explain what it was they were truly doing. Elias sat at his desk and opened his device. Messages poured in. Requests stacked like falling tiles. Each one seemed important. Each one whispered the same lie: if you don't answer now, everything will fall apart. So he answered. And answered. And answered. Hours passed without shape. His body stayed still while his mind sprinted in 1,000 directions. By the time the light outside shifted, he felt hollow, as if something essential had been traded away for motion. When the day finally released him, he walked home through streets that glowed with advertisements and promises. Happiness for sale. Success for rent. Fulfillment just one choice away. At his door, he paused. Inside waited silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the heavy kind that follows exhaustion. He dropped his bag. It made a dull sound, like something giving up. That night, sleep refused to come. His thoughts ran in circles. He thought of all the things he hadn't finished. All the things he'd agreed to without thinking. All the paths he had stepped onto without ever choosing. At some point, he stood and walked to the window. The city stared back, endless and bright. "Why does it feel like I'm doing everything?" he whispered. "And nothing at all?" The question hung in the air, unanswered. The next morning began the same way, but something small went wrong. On the train, his device went dark. No alerts. No messages. No glow. He tapped it. Shook it. Nothing. Panic rose in his chest, sharp and fast. His hands felt empty without the constant pull of instructions. For a moment, he didn't know what to do with himself. Then, something strange happened. He noticed the sound of the tracks. The rhythm beneath his feet. The way light moved across the window. A child across from him laughed, not at a screen, but at the reflection of their own face. Elias felt a tightness loosen, just a little. When he arrived at work, the doors were locked. A sign hung crookedly, explaining that the building would open later than usual due to an issue no one had predicted. People gathered outside, confused and irritated. Some paced. Some complained. Some stared at their devices as if willing them back to life. Elias stepped away from the crowd. Across the street was a narrow path he had never noticed before, tucked between two buildings. It looked older than the rest of the city, like a memory that refused to fade. He didn't know why, but he walked toward it. The noise softened with each step. The air changed. The path curved gently, leading him away from the rush and into a small open space. In the center stood a modest building made of wood and stone, its surface worn smooth by time. There was no sign. No screen. Just a simple door. He hesitated, then pushed it open. Inside, the air was calm. Not silent, but intentional. A soft light filled the room, coming from no obvious source. Shelves lined the walls, but they held few things. A chair stood near the center, and beside it, a table with a single cup of steaming tea. Behind the table sat an older figure, calm and still, as if time moved differently around them. "You look tired," the figure said. Elias opened his mouth, then closed it. He wasn't sure what to say. "You're carrying too much," the figure continued gently. "I don't think I can put any of it down," Elias replied. The figure smiled, not kindly, but knowingly. That's what everyone says before they learn how. Elias felt something stir inside him. Curiosity, maybe? Or relief. I don't even know what matters anymore, he admitted. The figure gestured to the chair. Sit. He did. For a moment neither spoke. The quiet felt deliberate, like it was waiting for him to notice it. You live in a world that celebrates more, the figure said at last. More work. More noise. More approval. More speed. But more is a hungry thing. It never says thank you. Elias swallowed. The words felt uncomfortably true. I try to keep up, he said. I say yes because I don't want to miss out. I don't want to fall behind. And yet, the figure replied, you feel lost. Elias nodded. The figure stood and walked to the shelves, running a hand over the empty spaces. Most people think their problem is lack. Lack of time. Lack of energy. Lack of opportunity. They turned back to him. But the real problem is confusion. Too many paths, all shouting to be chosen. Elias felt something click inside him, like a lock loosening. What if, the figure said softly, the answer isn't doing more, but choosing less? The words settled in the room, heavy and strange. Elias frowned. That sounds like giving up. The figure smiled again. Or like finally choosing. Outside, the city hummed on, unaware. Inside, the air felt charged, as if something ancient had been stirred. The figure moved closer and lowered their voice. There is a way to live where every step has weight. Where your energy is not scattered but sharpened. Where your time belongs to you again. Elias leaned forward without realizing it. But it begins, the figure said, with a question most people are too afraid to ask. They paused. If you could do only one thing, what would truly matter? The room seemed to tilt, as if the world itself had taken a breath. Elias opened his mouth to answer. And the lights went out. Chapter 2, The Quiet Weight of Choice. The darkness did not feel empty. It felt deliberate. Elias sat still, his breath shallow, waiting for panic to rise. It didn't. Instead, there was a strange calm, like the moment before rain touches dry ground. The absence of light sharpened his awareness. He could hear his own heartbeat, steady but uncertain. Then, softly, the light returned. Not all at once. Not harsh. It seeped back into the room like dawn through fog. The figure stood exactly where it had been before, unchanged, unhurried, as if the darkness had been part of the lesson. You see? The figure said quietly. Even when everything goes dark, something remains. Elias swallowed. I thought you disappeared. I never left, the figure replied. You simply stopped looking. Elias leaned back in the chair. His hands rested on his knees, fingers trembling slightly. You asked me a question, he said. About what matters? Yes. I don't know the answer. That's good, the figure said. Not knowing is honest. Most people pretend they know and spend their lives chasing echoes. Elias frowned. But if I don't know what matters, how do I choose anything at all? The figure walked to the small table and lifted the cup of tea. Steam curled upward, slow and patient. You've been taught that choice means loss. That if you don't say yes, something valuable disappears. Elias nodded. That feeling was familiar. Saying no felt like closing doors forever. But, the figure continued, every yes also closes doors. You just don't see them because you're too busy running through the open one. The words landed softly, but they stayed. The figure placed the cup back down. Tell me, they said, when was the last time you chose something because it truly mattered to you, not because you were afraid of what would happen if you didn't? Elias searched his memory. Moments flashed by, meetings accepted, favors done, projects started, invitations agreed to. All of them blurred together. None stood out as chosen with intention. I don't know, he admitted. I just respond. The figure nodded. That is the world you live in. A world that rewards responsiveness, not reflection. The walls around them seemed to stretch, revealing faint outlines of paths branching in every direction. Some were bright and wide. Others were narrow and nearly invisible. Every path, the figure said, asks for your life in exchange. Not all at once. A little at a time. Minutes. Attention. Energy. Peace. Elias felt a chill. He saw himself walking down countless paths at once, stretched thin, unable to fully step into any of them. Most people, the figure continued, try to walk them all. They believe effort will save them. That if they move fast enough, they won't have to choose. The paths began to blur together, twisting into a tangled mess. But the truth, the figure said softly, is that life does not reward effort alone. It rewards direction. The word echoed. Direction. Elias looked down at his hands. What if I choose the wrong thing? The figure smiled, this time with a hint of sadness. You already do. Every day. The difference is whether you choose on purpose. The room shifted again. The shelves faded. In their place appeared a wide field, empty except for a single stone path cutting through tall grass. The sky above was open and endless. This is what choice feels like, the figure said. Not control. Clarity. Elias stepped forward without thinking. The ground beneath his feet felt solid, reassuring. But how do I know what deserves my yes? He asked. The figure walked beside him. By learning to protect it. Protect what? Your energy. Your attention. Your time. They stopped beside a tall gate, rusted and heavy. It stood open, swaying slightly in the wind. Most people leave this gate open, the figure said. They believe saying yes makes them generous, valuable, important. Elias nodded slowly. That sounds like me. But generosity without intention becomes self-erasure, the figure replied. Beyond the gate, shadows moved. Shapes reached toward the opening, whispering in voices that sounded like obligations, expectations, opportunities, and fears. Elias felt his chest tighten. What happens if I close it? He asked. The figure met his gaze. Some will be disappointed. Some will be confused. Some will be angry. Elias swallowed. And then? Then, the figure said, you will finally hear your own voice. A long silence followed. The shadows pressed closer, murmuring promises and threats. Each one felt familiar. Each one had once convinced him it was essential. Elias lifted his hand toward the gate, then hesitated. I don't know how to choose, he whispered. The figure placed a hand over his. Warm. Steady. You don't choose everything. You choose what matters most, and let the rest fall away. The gate creaked as Elias pushed it closed. The sound echoed like a final breath. The shadows recoiled. The air grew lighter. For the first time in a long while, Elias felt space inside himself. He stepped back from the gate. The field seemed wider now, calmer. The path clearer. This is only the beginning, the figure said. Learning to say no is not about restriction. It's about devotion. To what? Elias asked. The figure smiled, but did not answer. Instead, the world shifted again. The field dissolved, and in its place rose a structure made of glass and mirrors. Inside, reflections of Elias moved in every direction, each one busy, each one reaching for something different. Tomorrow, the figure said, you will face the cost of your old habits. Elias felt unease settle in his chest. Every path you didn't close will demand payment. The reflections began speaking at once, their voices overlapping, urgent, pleading. Come here. Just one more thing. You can handle this. You owe us. Elias covered his ears, heart pounding. How do I make them stop? He asked. The figure stepped back, their form beginning to fade. You don't stop them, they said. You choose which voice deserves to stay. The last thing Elias saw before the room dissolved into light was the gate, standing firm behind him. And beyond it, something vast and quiet, waiting to be claimed. The light surged. And the world fell away. Chapter 3: The Cost of Almost Everything. Elias woke to the sound of his own breath. Not the shallow, hurried kind that usually greeted him, but something deeper. Slower. As if his body had remembered a rhythm it once knew long ago. He was no longer in the quiet room with the figure, nor in the field of paths. He lay on a narrow bed inside a space that felt unfinished. The walls were pale and smooth, but not blank. Faint symbols pulsed beneath the surface, like thoughts waiting to be spoken. He sat up slowly. Around him stood doors. Dozens of them. Some were tall and ornate, carved with symbols of achievement and applause. Others were plain, almost invisible, their handles worn smooth from use. A few were cracked open, light spilling through them in restless flickers. Every door hummed softly, each in a different tone. As Elias stood, the humming grew louder. The nearest door creaked open on its own. Inside, he saw himself seated at a long table, surrounded by people speaking quickly, passing documents, nodding approvingly. His reflection smiled, nodded, agreed. The air felt heavy, thick with expectation. A voice whispered from the doorframe. This one is called responsibility. Elias stepped closer. The reflection inside looked tired, eyes dull despite the confident posture. He reached out, and the moment his fingers brushed the frame, a weight settled on his shoulders. His chest tightened. He stepped back quickly. The door closed. Another door opened behind him. Laughter spilled out. Music. Movement. Inside, another version of himself stood in the center of attention, admired and envied. The air shimmered with approval. This is recognition, said the voice. Elias watched as his reflection bowed slightly, smiling even as exhaustion crept into his eyes. He stepped back again. More doors opened. Opportunity. Obligation. Progress. Potential. Each one glittered in its own way. Each one promised meaning. Each one demanded something in return. Soon the room was alive with sound. Voices overlapped. Doors swung wider. The hum grew into a roar. Elias clutched his head. Stop, he whispered. Nothing stopped. Then, from the far end of the chamber, a quieter sound cut through the noise. A steady rhythm, slow and deliberate. Footsteps. The figure emerged from between two doors that had remained closed. Their presence seemed to calm the air itself. You see now, the figure said gently, why choosing feels so heavy. Elias turned to them, eyes wide. They all want something from me. Yes, the figure replied. And each one believes it deserves everything. The doors rattled, as if offended. But I can't do it all, Elias said. I'm not enough. The figure nodded. That is the truth most people run from. The room quieted, as if listening. You are limited, the figure continued. Your time, your energy, your focus. They are not infinite. And that is not a flaw. Elias frowned. Then why does everything act like it is? Because the world profits when you forget your limits. The words landed with weight. The figure gestured toward the doors. Each one offers a story. A reason why it must come first. But none of them ask what you are willing to give up. Elias looked at the doors again. They seemed closer now, crowding him. What happens if I don't choose any? He asked. The figure met his gaze. Then they will choose for you. The doors surged forward, their light blinding. No, Elias said, backing away. The figure raised a hand, and the room froze. Sound vanished. Motion stilled. You are allowed to choose less, the figure said firmly. But to do that, you must accept something difficult. Elias swallowed. What? That trade-offs are not tragedies. They are truths. The figure stepped closer. Every meaningful life is shaped by what it refuses. The words echoed inside Elias, heavy and strange. The doors slowly faded, leaving only one. It was small. Unremarkable. Its surface was plain, unpolished, almost easy to overlook. This one, the figure said, does not promise applause. Elias approached it cautiously. What does it promise? Depth, the figure replied. Presence. The chance to do a few things well instead of many things poorly. Elias hesitated. What do I lose if I choose it? The figure's gaze softened. Everything that distracts you from who you could become. His hand hovered over the handle. Images flashed through his mind, missed messages, unanswered calls, expectations left unmet. Faces of people who might be disappointed. Doors that would never open again. Fear rose in his chest. Then, beneath it, something steadier. Relief. He took a breath and turned the handle. The door opened not to a room, but to a wide, quiet path bathed in warm light. The air felt lighter, clearer. The noise from behind dimmed to a distant murmur. As Elias stepped through, the other doors faded into shadows. Behind him, the figure spoke one last time. This path will ask you to say no often. Elias nodded. And sometimes, the figure added, you will doubt yourself. Elias paused. But when you do, the figure said softly, remember that clarity always feels lonely at first. The door closed. The path stretched ahead, peaceful and unknown. Elias took a step forward and felt the ground shift beneath his feet, as if something unseen was preparing to test the strength of his choice. Chapter 4. The Discipline of Less. The path did not remain gentle for long. At first, it felt almost kind beneath Elias's feet, smooth and welcoming, as though it approved of his choice. Light filtered through tall shapes on either side, neither trees nor walls, but something in between, structures formed from quiet intention. The air carried a calm weight, like the pause between breaths. Then the ground shifted. Not suddenly. Not violently. Slowly, deliberately, as if testing him. Each step forward required more effort than the last. The path narrowed, just enough to demand attention. Elias felt his muscles tense, his balance sharpen. The ease he'd felt moments ago began to fade. A voice drifted in from behind him. "You thought choosing less would make things easier." He turned. The figure stood several paces back, hands folded behind their back, expression unreadable. "I hoped it might," Elias admitted. The figure nodded. "Most people do." They walked forward, matching his pace. "But simplicity is not the same as comfort. What you've chosen is focus. And focus asks for discipline." The words settled heavily. Elias looked ahead. The path curved upward now, rising into a gentle incline. Each step required intention. "What kind of discipline?" he asked. "The kind that disappoints your impulses," the figure replied. "The kind that says no even when yes would feel good in the moment." Elias felt a familiar tightening in his chest. "I've tried discipline before. I always lose it." The figure smiled faintly. "That's because you treated it like punishment." They gestured around them. "This is not punishment. This is protection." As they climbed, shapes began to appear along the sides of the path. They looked like echoes of Elias himself, versions of him leaning against invisible walls, scrolling through unseen screens, nodding automatically, smiling without warmth. Each one whispered as he passed. "Just a quick look. You've earned a break. One small distraction won't hurt." His steps faltered. The voices were persuasive because they sounded reasonable. Kind even. "I know them," Elias murmured. "Yes," the figure said. "They are parts of you that learn to survive in noise." The path steepened. Elias felt sweat gather at his temples. "I don't want to fight myself," he said. "You're not fighting," the figure replied. "You're choosing who leads." The whispers grew louder as the slope rose. Some voices begged. Others mocked. A few pleaded with desperation. "Why are you doing this? You're missing out. You'll regret this." Elias clenched his jaw and kept walking. With each step, the voices weakened, fading into echoes. At the top of the incline, the path leveled out. The air changed again, cooler, clearer. Ahead stood a simple structure, open on all sides. Inside it, nothing moved. No distractions. No noise. Only space. Elias stepped inside and felt something settle in his chest. "This is where discipline lives," the figure said quietly. "Not in force. In clarity." Elias exhaled slowly. His thoughts, once frantic, now moved in orderly lines. Not silent, but calm. "I always thought discipline meant doing more," he said. "Most people do," the figure replied. "But real discipline is knowing what not to do." They gestured outward. "It's the ability to protect what matters from what merely shouts." Elias closed his eyes. Images surfaced, unfinished projects, half-kept promises, scattered ambitions. For the first time, he didn't feel shame. He felt understanding. "I wasn't weak," he said softly. "I was scattered." The figure nodded. "And scattering feels productive, until you realize nothing grows deep roots." The ground beneath them shifted again, this time gently. The structure dissolved, revealing a long road stretching forward. On either side stood tall markers, each etched with a single word. Focus. Energy. Time. Attention. Presence. Each one glowed faintly as Elias passed. "These are your real resources," the figure said. "Not ours. Not effort. These." Elias touched one of the markers. It pulsed warmly beneath his fingers. "I've been spending them without thinking," he said. "Yes," the figure replied. "And now you're learning to invest them." They walked in silence for a while. Then Elias asked, "What happens when I fail?" The figure didn't answer right away. "When you slip," they said finally, "you return. Not with shame, but with awareness." Elias frowned. "That sounds too forgiving." The figure smiled. "Discipline that punishes collapses. Discipline that forgives endures." The road narrowed again, and in the distance, Elias saw movement. Figures approached, people he recognized. Colleagues. Friends. Faces from his past. They waved, smiling, calling out. "Come back," one said. "We need you," said another. "You're overthinking this," said a third. His chest tightened. They don't mean harm, Elias said. I know, the figure replied. But good intentions can still pull you off your path. The figures drew closer, their expressions hopeful. Elias hesitated. If I keep walking, he said, I'll disappoint them. Yes, the figure said gently. And that makes me selfish. The figure stopped walking. No, they said firmly. It makes you honest. Elias met their gaze. You are not responsible for fulfilling every expectation placed upon you. You are responsible for living the life that is yours to live. The figures paused, watching. Elias took a breath. Then another. I can care about them, he said slowly, without carrying them. The figures softened, then faded, like mist touched by sunlight. The path ahead grew clearer. But as Elias stepped forward, a heaviness returned, not from outside, but within. A quiet doubt. What if I choose wrong again? He whispered. The figure looked at him for a long moment. You will, they said. Elias stiffened. But this time, the figure continued, you will notice sooner. They placed a hand over his chest. And that is the difference between drifting and living. The path narrowed once more, leading toward a place wrapped in shadow. Something waited there, something heavier, denser. Elias felt a tightening in his stomach. What's ahead? He asked. The figure's voice softened. The cost of commitment. The air grew still. Elias took a step forward. And the shadows ahead began to move. Chapter 5, The Weight of Yes. The shadows ahead did not rush toward him. They waited. Elias slowed his steps, every instinct urging caution. The air thickened as he moved forward, pressing against his chest like a question that demanded an answer before it would allow him to pass. The path narrowed until there was barely space for his feet. On either side, the darkness rose like walls, not solid, but dense with presence. The figure walked beside him, silent now. From the shadows, shapes began to form, not fully human, not entirely abstract. They were made of posture and intention rather than flesh. Each one carried something heavy in its arms. One carried a stack of unfinished plans. Another held expectations shaped like faces he recognized. Another dragged a chain of habits, worn smooth from repetition. They stepped closer. Elias felt the weight before they touched him. This is what happens when you say yes, the figure finally said. Not once, but fully. The first shadow stepped forward and placed its burden into Elias's hands. It was heavier than it looked. A vision flashed, late nights, stretched focus, constant maintenance. Not chaos, but commitment. Elias staggered. The next shadow approached. You chose me once, it whispered. You can't undo that. It added its weight. His knees bent. Then another. And another. Each one carried something he had once welcomed, opportunities, responsibilities, identities he had worn proudly. His arms trembled. I can't carry all of this, Elias gasped. That's the truth, the figure said calmly. The shadows didn't attack. They simply waited, patient, certain. Elias felt his breath shorten. His back burned. His vision blurred. Is this what choosing means? He asked. Being crushed by it? The figure stepped closer. No. This is what happens when you confuse choosing with collecting. Elias tried to shift the weight, but it only pressed deeper into him. Then what do I do? He cried. The figure knelt beside him. You decide what you're willing to carry, and what you must lay down. Elias looked at the burdens in his arms. Each one whispered reasons to stay. Fear. Guilt. Pride. Obligation. His hands shook. I don't want to disappoint them, he whispered. The figure's voice softened. Disappointment is lighter than resentment. The words struck him like a quiet bell. Elias closed his eyes. Slowly, trembling, he lowered the first burden to the ground. It thudded softly. Nothing broke. The world did not end. A sharp breath escaped him. He set down another. Then another. With each release, his chest expanded. His spine straightened. His breath deepened. Some burdens resisted, clinging to him like vines. These ones, the figure said gently, are tied to your identity. Elias hesitated. These felt like parts of himself. If I let them go, he whispered, who am I? The figure met his gaze. You become someone who chooses, not someone who is chosen by everything. Elias swallowed hard. With effort, he loosened his grip. The weight slid away. Silence followed. The shadows receded, retreating into the walls until the path stood clear once more. Elias stood alone, breathing hard, hands empty. The relief was immediate and unsettling. "I feel lighter," he said. "Yes," the figure replied. "And that can feel frightening when you're used to carrying weight." The path ahead shimmered faintly. "But now," the figure continued, "comes the harder part." Elias turned to them. "Harder than this?" The figure nodded. "Now you must protect what you've chosen." A breeze moved through the space, carrying distant sounds, voices calling, tasks waiting, opportunities knocking. "They will return," the figure said. "Not all at once, but persistently." Elias clenched his fists. "How do I keep from picking everything back up?" The figure gestured toward Elias's chest. "You learn to ask a better question." Elias waited. "Not can I do this," the figure said, "but should I?" The words echoed. "You have the strength to do many things," the figure continued. "But strength without direction is exhaustion." The path ahead narrowed once more, this time into a single line of light. Elias took a step toward it. Before he could take another, the ground trembled. From the darkness behind him, a low sound rose, deep, resonant, familiar. A voice that carried authority. "You're walking away from potential." Elias froze. The voice grew louder. "You could be more. Do more. Be seen." The figure's expression changed, just slightly. "That," they said quietly, "is the most dangerous voice of all." The ground behind Elias began to crack, glowing with restless energy. Shapes surged within it, visions of success, admiration, endless possibility. His heart pounded. "If I don't answer," Elias said, "won't I waste my life?" The figure stepped beside him, gaze steady. "You will waste it only if you let others define what more means." The voice boomed again, closer now. "Come back. You're meant for greatness." Elias closed his eyes. In the silence, he felt something steady beneath the noise. A quiet knowing. Small but firm. He opened his eyes. "No," he said. The word rang through the space, clear and solid. The ground stilled. The voice faded. The shadows dissolved. The path ahead brightened, no longer narrow but focused, like a beam of light cutting through fog. Elias stood taller. The figure smiled. "You're learning," they said. Elias took a step forward. And felt the world tilt once more, as if preparing to test not his strength, but his resolve. Chapter 6: The Quiet Power of Focus. The path no longer trembled beneath Elias's feet. It felt steady now, narrow, yes, but intentional. Each step landed with clarity, as though the ground itself approved of his direction. The air grew still. Not empty, not silent, but calm in a way that made every sound meaningful. Elias noticed the rhythm of his breath, the subtle shift of weight in his body, the soft echo of his footsteps. Ahead, the path opened into a wide, circular space. At its center stood a single object, a flame. It hovered above the ground, small but unwavering. It did not flicker wildly or cast harsh light. Instead, it glowed with a quiet intensity, steady and warm. Elias felt drawn to it. As he approached, the figure appeared beside him once more. "This," the figure said, "is focus." Elias studied the flame. "It looks fragile." The figure nodded. "It is. That's why it's powerful." Around the flame, shadows moved. Shapes shifted at the edges of the space, distractions, temptations, worries, circling like curious animals. "They're waiting," Elias said. "Yes," the figure replied. "They always do." One of the shadows darted forward, stretching into a familiar form. It whispered of urgency. Another promised excitement. Another whispered of comfort and escape. Elias felt his attention tugged in multiple directions. "What happens if I look away?" he asked. The figure didn't answer immediately. Elias turned his eyes from the flame for just a moment, and it dimmed. He looked back quickly, and it brightened again. Understanding washed over him. "It needs attention," he said. "Yes," the figure replied. "Focus is not something you have. It's something you give." The flame pulsed gently, as if in agreement. Elias crouched beside it. The warmth was comforting, but not consuming. He felt calm in its presence, grounded. "But everything wants my attention," he said. "How do I choose what deserves it?" The figure gestured toward the shadows. Most things ask loudly. What matters often waits quietly. One shadow surged forward, growing taller, more insistent. You don't have time for this, it hissed. There's so much to do. Elias felt his chest tighten. The figure placed a hand on his shoulder. Watch. Elias looked back at the flame. He focused on its center, the way it held steady despite the movement around it. The shadow wavered, then faded. Elias exhaled. You're not fighting them, the figure said. You're choosing where to stand. The flame brightened. Around them, the space shifted. The circle widened, revealing paths branching outward, dozens of them, but only one was lit by the flame's glow. This is how focus works, the figure continued. It narrows your world so your energy can go deep instead of wide. Elias nodded slowly. But what if I choose the wrong thing to focus on? The figure met his eyes. Then you adjust. Focus is not a prison. It's a practice. The flame flickered, then steadied again. Elias reached out and held his hand near it. The warmth spread through his fingers, up his arm, into his chest. For the first time in a long while, he felt fully present. No pull. No rush. Just now. Then the ground trembled. The shadows stirred, more aggressively this time. They didn't rush the flame. They surrounded it. From within them came voices, sharper now. You're falling behind. Others are moving faster. You'll miss your chance. Elias felt his pulse quicken. The figure's voice cut through the noise. Focus is not speed. The shadows closed in. Focus is direction. The flame flared brighter. Elias felt something shift inside him, a quiet confidence, steady and unshaken. He stood taller. I choose this, he said, his voice calm but firm. The shadows recoiled. But they'll come back, Elias added. Yes, the figure said. They always do. So what then? The figure smiled. Then you return your attention to what matters. Again. And again. And again. The flame pulsed in rhythm with Elias's breath. The shadows began to fade, retreating to the edges of the space. The world felt clearer, sharper. Elias looked around and noticed something new. The space itself was shaped by his focus. Where his attention rested, the world gained form. Where it wandered, things blurred. This is how you build a life, the figure said. Not through force. Through devotion. Elias nodded slowly. The flame dimmed slightly, not from weakness, but from readiness. Are you ready to carry this with you? The figure asked. Elias hesitated. What if I lose it? The figure's eyes softened. You will. Many times. Elias felt a flicker of fear. But you'll also remember how to return. The flame rose from the ground, drifting toward Elias's chest. He felt warmth spread through him, settling just beneath his ribs. It didn't burn. It anchored. The space around them dissolved, leaving only a path ahead, narrow, clear, and steady. Elias took a step forward. Behind him, the shadows whispered once more, but softer now, less convincing. Ahead, the path curved towards something unseen. As Elias walked, a new weight appeared, not heavy, but real. Responsibility. Not the kind that crushed, but the kind that asked for care. The figure's voice echoed softly behind him. Focus gives you power. But power demands honesty. The path began to darken again. Elias felt the air change. Something was waiting ahead, something that would test not his attention, but his integrity. And as he moved forward, he sensed that the next choice would not be about what to do, but about who he was willing to become. Chapter 7: The Mirror of Intent. The path narrowed again, not in width this time, but in certainty. The light that had guided Elias softened, dimming into a muted glow that barely touched the ground ahead. The air felt heavier, not with pressure, but with meaning. Each step carried weight, not from effort, but from consequence. Ahead stood a tall surface, smooth and dark, rising from the ground like still water frozen in time. A mirror. It reflected nothing at first. Elias slowed as he approached. The closer he came, the more the surface shimmered, until shapes began to form within it. Not his reflection, not yet. The figure appeared beside him once more. This is where intention is tested, they said. Elias studied the mirror. It doesn't show me. It will, the figure replied. But not the version you perform for the world. The surface rippled. A scene appeared. Elias saw himself sitting at a table, speaking with confidence, guiding others. His voice was calm, assured. People leaned in, listening. Their faces showed trust. Then the image shifted. He saw himself again, this time working late into the night, eyes tired, movements automatic. His words were sharp. His presence hollow. The mirror changed again. Now he stood alone, surrounded by unfinished things, promising himself he would return to them someday. Elias stepped back. "These are all me," he whispered. "Yes," the figure said. "But not all at once." The mirror pulsed. "What you see here," the figure continued, "are the outcomes of intention without awareness." The surface darkened, then cleared again. This time, Elias saw himself standing still, not busy, not idle. Present. He listened to someone speaking, truly listened. His attention didn't drift. His eyes didn't search for escape. The scene felt heavier somehow, but also more grounded. "That one feels real," Elias said. The figure nodded. "Because intention without attention is empty. And attention without intention is aimless." The mirror shimmered again. Now Elias saw himself making choices, small ones. Saying no calmly. Leaving things unfinished on purpose. Turning away from noise. Choosing depth over display. With each choice, something in the image sharpened. The world around that version of him grew richer, quieter, more alive. But then the mirror shifted again. This time, the image darkened. Elias saw himself standing at a crossroads, frozen. Opportunities passed by like shadows. He hesitated, unsure, afraid to commit. His face showed doubt, not peace. "That's fear," the figure said. "Disguised as caution." Elias swallowed. "How do I know when I'm being wise, and when I'm just afraid?" The figure didn't answer immediately. The mirror responded instead. It showed two nearly identical scenes. In one, Elias stepped forward with tension in his shoulders, jaw clenched, eyes searching for approval. In the other, he stepped forward slowly, breath steady, gaze calm. Both choices carried risk. But only one carried alignment. "You feel the difference," the figure said quietly. "Your body knows before your mind does." Elias nodded slowly. The mirror faded to a soft glow, then began to crack, not violently, but deliberately, like ice thawing. Fragments drifted downward, each reflecting a single word. Clarity. Courage. Patience. Honesty. They hovered in the air around him. "These are not traits," the figure said. "They are practices." Elias reached out and touched one. It warmed at his fingertips. "I thought choosing less would make life simpler," he said. "But it feels heavier in a different way." The figure smiled. "Depth has weight. But it also has meaning." The fragments dissolved into light, and the mirror disappeared entirely. In its place stood a narrow bridge suspended over darkness. No rails. No visible end. The air hummed with quiet intensity. Elias felt his pulse quicken. "This is where intention becomes action," the figure said. "Where clarity demands courage." Elias stared at the bridge. "What happens if I fall?" The figure met his gaze. "You learn where your footing is weak." Elias took a step forward. The bridge held. He took another. Each step required presence. Any wandering thought made the bridge tremble. He focused on his breath. On the feel of the surface beneath his feet. Halfway across, voices rose again, fainter now, but still persuasive. "You're overthinking. You could turn back. This is too much work." Elias paused. The bridge swayed. He felt fear rise, sharp and sudden. The figure's voice carried across the space, calm and steady. "Fear will always appear when your intention becomes real." Elias steadied himself. "I'm not trying to be perfect," he said aloud. "I'm trying to be honest." The bridge steadied. He moved forward again. With each step, the voices faded, until only his breath remained. At the far end of the bridge, a soft glow awaited. As Elias stepped onto solid ground, the bridge behind him dissolved into light. The figure joined him once more. "You've crossed from wanting to change," they said, "to choosing how you live." Elias looked ahead. The landscape beyond was open, vast, and undefined. No signs. No instructions. Just possibility. But beneath that openness, he felt something solid. A center. A quiet resolve. The figure turned to him. "What comes next," they said, "is not about discovering more." Elias waited. It's about honoring what you already know. The ground beneath his feet pulsed once, gently. And somewhere in the distance, something began to move, slowly, deliberately, toward him. Chapter 8. The Shape of Commitment. The movement in the distance was slow, deliberate, as if whatever approached was in no hurry at all. Elias stood still, resisting the urge to prepare, to brace, to calculate. The ground beneath him felt solid now, no longer shifting with every breath. Whatever was coming, he sensed, would not be stopped by readiness alone. The figure stood beside him, quiet as ever. What is it? Elias asked. Not what, the figure replied. Who? The shape drew closer, resolving not into a creature or shadow, but into a version of Elias himself. Not identical, older, perhaps, or simply more settled. His posture was relaxed but grounded. His eyes held no urgency, only steadiness. They regarded each other in silence. This is who you become when you follow through, the figure said. Not perfect. Not finished. But aligned. The other Elias spoke, his voice calm and unhurried. You've been learning to choose, he said. Now you must learn to stay. Elias felt a strange tension tighten in his chest. Stay where? With yourself. The words struck deeper than he expected. I've stayed before, Elias said defensively. I've committed. I've pushed through. The other Elias nodded. Yes. You've endured. But you haven't always remained present. He gestured outward, and the world around them shifted. Scenes appeared, Elias beginning projects with energy, then slowly drifting away as doubts crept in. Moments where he stayed physically, but mentally escaped. Times he kept going out of obligation rather than belief. You didn't quit, the other Elias said gently. You just stopped showing up fully. Elias felt heat rise in his chest. I was tired. I know, the other said. But exhaustion isn't always from effort. Sometimes it comes from resisting what's true. The words lingered. The figure stepped forward. This is the final discipline, they said. Not focus. Not clarity. But commitment. Elias swallowed. Commitment feels heavy. It is, the figure replied. Because it binds your actions to your values. The ground beneath them shifted again, forming a wide, open space. In its center stood a simple stone table. On it lay a single object, a small, unmarked seal. This, the figure said, represents your choice to stay when novelty fades. Elias approached it cautiously. What happens if I take it? The other Elias answered. Then you stop negotiating with yourself. Elias hesitated. That sounds final. The figure nodded. Commitment closes certain doors so that your energy can finally move forward instead of sideways. Elias looked around. In the distance, he saw flickers of other paths, tempting, undefined, full of possibility. What if I regret it? He asked quietly. The other Elias met his gaze. You will. Sometimes. Elias stiffened. But regret, the other continued, is not a signal to quit. It's a signal that you're growing past the comfort of indecision. Elias exhaled slowly. He reached for the seal. The moment his fingers touched it, a wave of sensation passed through him, not pain, not pleasure, but weight. A grounding force that settled deep in his chest. The world sharpened. Sounds became clearer. Colors deepened. His breath slowed. He felt, here. The figure nodded. Commitment anchors you in reality. It removes the illusion of endless options and replaces it with meaning. Elias turned to the other version of himself. What happens to you now? The other Elias smiled faintly. I become you. And with that, he dissolved not into light, but into presence, folding seamlessly into Elias's chest, like a breath returning to the body. Elias staggered slightly, then steadied. The figure watched him closely. How do you feel? Elias searched for the right word. Heavier, he said. But clearer. The figure nodded. That's integrity. The ground shifted again, forming a narrow trail leading forward. It wasn't dramatic or grand. It looked ordinary. Is that it? Elias asked. Just one path? Yes, the figure replied. And you will walk it every day. Elias studied it. No dramatic signs. No promise of glory. Where does it lead? He asked. The figure smiled faintly. To your life. Elias took a step forward. The path felt firm beneath his feet, reliable in a quiet way. As he walked, he noticed something strange. The world around him began to respond differently. The noise he once heard constantly had softened. Distractions still existed, but they felt distant, less insistent. He felt resistance rise, old habits tugging at him, but also something new, steadiness. After a few steps, he looked back. The figure was still there, watching. "Will you stay?" Elias asked. The figure shook their head. "You don't need me the way you did before." Elias felt a flicker of fear. "What if I lose my way?" "You will," the figure said gently. "And then you'll find it again. That's the practice." The figure began to fade, becoming less distinct with each breath. "One more thing," Elias called out. The figure paused. "What if I forget all of this?" A soft smile touched their face. "Then life will remind you." And they were gone. Elias stood alone on the path. Ahead, the road stretched forward, not endlessly, but honestly. He took another step. Then another. And as he walked, he felt something new settle into place, not certainty, not control, but trust. Behind him, the world he once chased grew quiet. Ahead of him, the path waited, not promising ease, but offering truth. And somewhere just beyond the bend, a new test was already taking shape. Chapter 9: The Silence Between Steps. The path no longer announced itself. There were no signs, no shifting lights, no guiding hum beneath Elias's feet. It simply existed, quiet, unadorned, almost ordinary. The kind of road one might overlook entirely if not already walking it. At first, that unsettled him. He had grown used to symbols, to lessons revealing themselves through motion and voice. Now there was only the sound of his own steps and the soft rhythm of his breath. The world felt empty. Not barren. Just unoccupied. Elias slowed, listening. Nothing called out to him. No shadow stirred. No voice challenged him. A strange unease crept in. Without resistance, how would he know he was still moving forward? He stopped. Silence wrapped around him, not threatening but vast. In that stillness, thoughts surfaced, uninvited, unfiltered. Am I doing enough? Am I wasting time? What if this is all there is? The questions echoed louder than any noise he'd faced before. He turned, half expecting the figure to appear. But the path behind him lay empty, stretching back into quiet distance. No guide. No mirror. Just him. Elias sat down on the path. The ground was cool beneath him, solid. He closed his eyes. At first, his thoughts raced, grasping for something to solve, something to improve. He noticed the urge to plan, to optimize, to make this moment useful. Then he remembered the flame. He let the thoughts pass without following them. Time stretched. At some point, he noticed his breath again. Slow. Even. Present. And beneath that, something subtler. A sense of being enough without doing anything at all. It startled him. He opened his eyes. The world looked the same, but he felt different inside it. That's when he noticed movement. Not ahead. Not behind. Beside him. A small figure walked parallel to the path, just beyond its edge. It didn't intrude or demand attention. It simply walked. Curious, Elias matched its pace. The figure was quiet, almost transparent, its form shifting like mist held together by intention. "What are you?" Elias asked. The figure glanced at him. Its eyes held neither judgment nor expectation. "I am the space you usually rush past," it said. Elias frowned. "That doesn't make sense." The figure smiled faintly. "It will." They walked together in silence for a while. The quiet felt different now, not empty, but alive with subtle movement. "I don't feel pulled anymore," Elias said. "Nothing is chasing me." The figure nodded. "Because you stopped running." Elias considered this. "Is this what peace feels like?" "Sometimes," the figure replied. "Other times, peace feels like boredom." Elias laughed softly. "That's disappointing." "Only if you confuse stimulation with meaning," the figure said. They walked on. Soon, Elias noticed something strange. The path beneath his feet began to widen, not dramatically, but steadily. With each step, it grew more stable, more defined. "What's happening?" he asked. "You're building continuity," the figure replied. "The quiet work of returning again and again." Elias frowned. "Returning to what?" "To yourself." The path widened further, becoming less a path and more a road, one shaped by repetition rather than revelation. Elias felt a twinge of discomfort. "This feels ordinary," The figure nodded. Yes. Elias stopped walking. I thought it would feel more meaningful. The figure stopped too. Meaning isn't loud, it said. It accumulates. Elias looked around. The landscape hadn't changed much, but he realized something had shifted inside him. The urgency was gone. The need to prove, to impress, to chase, quiet. But with it came a strange vulnerability. If nothing dramatic happens, he said, how do I know I'm growing? The figure met his gaze. Growth often feels like boredom to the part of you addicted to chaos. Elias exhaled slowly. They resumed walking. Time passed, how much, he couldn't tell. There were no markers here, no milestones. Then, ahead, something unexpected appeared. A simple bench. Wooden. Worn. Ordinary. It sat beside the road as if it had always been there. Elias stopped beside it. Should I sit? He asked. The figure shrugged. You can. Elias sat. The bench was solid, comfortable, familiar. A warmth spread through him, not excitement, but steadiness. This is rest, the figure said. Not escape. Not avoidance. Just rest. Elias closed his eyes. For the first time in a long while, he felt no pull to move forward or backward. Just here. After a moment, he spoke softly. I used to think rest had to be earned. The figure smiled gently. It still can be. But not through exhaustion. Elias nodded. He sat there longer than he expected. When he finally stood, something had changed again, not in the world, but in his posture. He felt rooted. He looked ahead. The path continued, but now it felt familiar. Not demanding. Not urgent. Simply available. As he took his next step, a thought surfaced, not loud, but clear. This is what consistency feels like. And somewhere, deep beneath the quiet, something stirred, an awareness that the next challenge would not come from chaos or temptation, but from the subtle danger of comfort. The path curved gently forward. And waiting just beyond the bend was a question he had never truly faced before. Chapter 10: The Comfort That Softens the Will. The path curved gently, almost kindly, as if inviting Elias forward without resistance. The ground was smooth, the air temperate, the silence calm. Nothing tugged at him. Nothing demanded effort. And that, somehow, made him uneasy. He walked for a while before realizing something subtle but important. His steps had become automatic. His awareness drifted. His breath remained steady, but his presence thinned, like fog dispersing in morning light. The path no longer asked anything of him. It simply allowed him to pass. Ahead, the world softened. Colors blurred slightly. Edges lost their sharpness. The air felt warm, comforting, like a long afternoon with nowhere to be. Then he saw it. A place that looked like rest, but deeper. A wide clearing opened before him, filled with low light and gentle sound. Soft ground welcomed his feet. The air carried the faint scent of familiarity, like old rooms and old habits. At the center lay a wide cushion of earth, shaped perfectly for comfort. Elias slowed. Something about this place felt inviting. A voice spoke, not from behind or ahead, but from within the air itself. You've done enough. Elias paused. You've learned. The voice continued. You've grown. You deserve ease now. He swallowed. The voice was warm, reassuring. It sounded like relief. Stay, it said. Rest. You've earned it. Elias felt the pull immediately. His body leaned toward the center of the clearing without his permission. The idea of staying, of stopping, felt almost sacred. He lowered himself onto the soft ground. A sigh escaped his chest, deep and long. Nothing hurt here. Nothing demanded more. Nothing asked him to stretch or choose or risk. He could stay like this. A part of him smiled. Then something else stirred. A quiet tension beneath the calm. He listened. Beneath the comfort there was stillness, but not the kind he had known before. This stillness was heavy. Sticky. He shifted his weight. The softness resisted. A voice whispered again, closer now. Why struggle when peace is right here? Elias looked around. The clearing was beautiful, but static. No wind moved through it. No sound changed. He realized something unsettling. Nothing here was growing. He tried to stand. The ground held him more tightly than he expected. A flicker of alarm passed through him. I'm just resting, he told himself. But another voice, quieter, steadier, rose beneath the comfort. Rest that never ends becomes stagnation. Elias pressed his palms into the earth and pushed. The ground resisted, not with force, but with persuasion. Stay, the air whispered. You've earned this peace. He struggled, muscles tightening. That's not peace, he muttered. That's hiding. The word echoed. The world shuddered. The comfort around him thickened, clinging, almost pleading. You don't need to grow anymore, it whispered. You're fine as you are. Elias paused, breathing hard. The words were tempting. So tempting. But something inside him, quiet, firm, responded. Growth isn't punishment. He planted his foot. The ground resisted again, then slowly released him. He stood, trembling. The clearing darkened slightly, as if disappointed. You're making this harder than it needs to be, the voice said. Elias met the air with steady eyes. Easy isn't the same as right. The warmth began to fade. The soft ground cracked, revealing solid earth beneath. The comforting haze thinned, revealing the shape of the path continuing onward. Elias took a step forward. The clearing sighed. Then it collapsed in on itself, dissolving like fog touched by sun. The world sharpened again. Elias stood once more on the path, heart pounding, breath steadying. He realized his legs were shaking, not from fear, but from effort. He had almost chosen to stop becoming. He exhaled slowly. Ahead, the road continued quieter now, but clearer. He looked back once. The place of comfort was gone, leaving no trace. Only then did he understand. Comfort had not been the enemy. Stagnation had. He walked on. With each step, the path grew firmer, more defined, not smoother, but honest. He felt tired. But it was a good tired. The kind that comes from movement with purpose. As the light shifted ahead, a new presence began to form, not a figure, not a voice, but a weight in the air. A seriousness. The sense that what lay ahead would ask something deeper than effort or attention. Something about identity. Elias slowed. He knew the next challenge would not test his discipline or focus. It would ask him to choose who he would be when no one was watching. And this time, there would be no guide to walk beside him. Chapter 11. The Shape of Who Remains. The air ahead felt different, thicker, not heavy but dense with meaning. It pressed softly against Elias's skin, like a question waiting to be answered without words. The path narrowed again, not because it was closing, but because everything else had fallen away. No scenery. No symbols. No guides. Just ground, breath, and the steady rhythm of his steps. Elias felt exposed. Not threatened, seen. Each step forward seemed to echo inward, stirring memories he hadn't thought about in years. Moments when he had chosen safety over truth. Moments when he had hidden behind effort instead of honesty. Moments when he had shaped himself to fit what was expected. The air seemed to ask, "Who are you when no one is watching?" He slowed. The world around him did not shift or react. It simply waited. A presence emerged, not in front of him, not behind him, but within the space of his awareness. It was not a voice. It was a recognition. This was not a test of strength. It was a test of alignment. Elias felt something loosen in his chest, something that had been clenched for a long time. He saw himself as he had been in countless moments, agreeing when he meant no, performing when he longed to rest, chasing approval dressed up as ambition. Not out of malice. Out of fear of becoming irrelevant. The realization landed gently, but it landed deep. "I want it to matter," he whispered. The air responded, not with judgment, but understanding. "You already do." The words were not spoken, but felt, steady, undeniable. Tears stung his eyes. Not from pain, but from recognition. He had spent so long trying to earn his place in the world that he had forgotten he already occupied one. The ground beneath him shifted, not violently, but subtly, like a puzzle clicking into place. The path ahead widened, not into something grand, but into something honest. There were no symbols now. No metaphors. No figures. Just space. And in that space, a choice, not dramatic, not heroic. A quiet one. Elias could continue walking as he was, carrying the old habits dressed in new discipline. Or he could let something essential fall away. Not effort. Not responsibility. But the need to be more than he was. He stopped. Closed his eyes. And let go. Not of ambition, but of the fear that he was not enough without it. The sensation was almost imperceptible, like exhaling after holding a breath for too long. When he opened his eyes, the world looked the same. But he felt different inside it. Lighter. Not because he had removed parts of himself, but because he had stopped pushing against who he was. The path ahead remained, but it no longer felt like a test. It felt like an expression. He walked forward, not to prove, not to earn, but to live in alignment with what mattered. As he moved, something settled deep within him, a quiet confidence that didn't need reinforcement. A knowing that he could act without performing, choose without defending, rest without guilt. And when he stumbled, as he surely would, he would return, not in shame, but in awareness. The world around him seemed to breathe with him now. In the distance, the path began to fade, not because it ended, but because it no longer needed to be shown. He was carrying it within him. And then, just before the space dissolved completely, a final understanding surfaced, not as words, but as truth. This was not the end of the journey. It was the end of seeking permission to begin. The world softened. The light dimmed. And Elias stepped forward into his life, not chasing, not resisting, but choosing. Quietly. Fully. Intentionally. Chapter 12, The Way Forward. Elias did not notice the moment the path disappeared. There was no edge, no sudden drop, no dramatic crossing. One step simply blended into the next until he realized he was no longer on a path at all. He was in a place that felt like life itself. Not symbolic. Not heightened. Just real. The air carried the quiet hum of motion, distant movement, unseen lives unfolding in their own rhythms. The ground beneath him was solid, familiar. Not sacred. Not special. And yet, everything felt different. Elias stood still, not because he was unsure, but because there was nothing urging him forward or pulling him back. No voice called his name. No trial waited in shadow. For the first time, there was nothing to overcome. A breeze passed through him, gentle and unremarkable. He felt complete. Not finished. Not perfected. Just complete enough to begin. He noticed how his body stood, balanced, unguarded. His breath came easily. His thoughts arrived and passed without clinging. The world had not changed. He had. As he looked around, scenes emerged, not visions but moments. Ordinary ones. A table with unfinished work. A conversation waiting to happen. A decision small enough to ignore, yet meaningful enough to shape a day. These were not challenges. They were invitations. Elias understood now, this was the true field of practice. Not moments of revelation, but moments of choice made quietly, again and again. He stepped forward. The ground responded, not with guidance, but with permission. As he walked, memories surfaced, not as lessons, but as companions. The moments of doubt. The moments of clarity. The stillness. The struggle. They no longer demanded anything from him. They simply were. A subtle warmth spread through his chest, not excitement, not pride, but something steadier. Belonging. He did not belong to a role or a goal or an identity. He belonged to his own attention. The world around him began to fill in with detail. Sounds sharpened. Textures returned. Life resumed its ordinary motion. A bird passed overhead. Somewhere, someone laughed. Somewhere else, something ended. And somewhere nearby, something began. Elias realized that this quiet participation, was what he had been searching for all along. Not escape. Not mastery. But presence. He stopped walking. Not because he had arrived, but because he didn't need to move to feel complete. A thought rose gently, without force. I am here. Not as a declaration. As a fact. The space around him responded, not with applause or affirmation, but with allowance. He could act now without striving. Rest without guilt. Choose without fear. And when confusion returned, as it inevitably would, he would meet it not as an enemy, but as a signal to listen again. The world did not promise ease. But it offered honesty. Elias smiled faintly. Then he turned, not toward a destination, but toward the next moment, and stepped into it, unburdened, awake, and whole. And in that simple step, the journey completed itself. Only to begin again quietly, wherever he chose to place his attention next. Quick question before you go. What's one thing you need to stop saying yes to? Drop it in the comments. You might be surprised how powerful that moment of honesty feels. If this story hit home, tap like and subscribe to join the momentum, We build clarity here, not chaos. And tell me, what book should I break down next?